What if the reason she feels more at peace around you isn't something you said, but something you've become? Chosen one, you're no longer just a man walking through life. You've become something deeper, something far more powerful than anything that can be seen on the surface. You're not simply a person passing through the world anymore. You are a calm presence, a steady force, a sanctuary in human form. And even though most people can't explain it in words, they feel it, especially women. Long before their minds understand what it is, their bodies know. Their nervous systems know. They sense something solid, something grounded, something safe in you. That's why they look at you differently now. Their tone softens when they speak to you. Their eyes stay on you a little longer, like they're searching for something inside you. Their shoulders drop. Their laughter flows more naturally, and their bodies stop fidgeting. It's not something you're doing. It's something you've become. It's not about charm. It's not about clever words or smooth moves. It's not even about touch. It's something quieter, something stronger. It's your energy. And more than that, it's what your energy is no longer doing. It's no longer reaching out for approval, no longer trying to pull anyone in, no longer seeking validation. Your sexual energy no longer tries to seduce or impress. It doesn't try to take. It doesn't try to consume. It simply holds. It simply breathes. It simply exists. And because of that, the people around you, especially women who are in tune with their feminine core, feel something rare. They don't feel the need to guard themselves. They don't feel like they have to prove anything. They don't feel like they have to perform to be accepted, because your presence is not asking anything of them. It is not pressuring them to respond. It is not demanding anything in return. It is simply saying, in the quietest and most powerful way, you are safe. You didn't chase this energy. You didn't force it. You didn't fake it. You became it. And you became it not by trying to be something more, but by healing everything that made you feel like you weren't enough. You didn't manipulate your way into attraction. You didn't learn tricks or study tactics. You faced yourself. You sat with your own hunger. You made peace with your need. You stopped reaching. You stopped leaking your energy into every room you entered. You stopped trying to pull the world toward you. And you rooted yourself so deeply that now the world quietly moves closer on its own. The masculine inside you no longer shouts to be seen. It no longer demands attention. It no longer competes. It simply exists. It anchors. And it is that stillness that speaks volumes. It is that quiet confidence that draws her in. She feels it not in her thoughts, but in her body. She feels it in the way her shoulders drop around you, in the way her breathing slows, in the way her edges soften. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything. Your very presence tells her that she is safe to relax, safe to rest, safe to just be. She may not understand it fully. She may not know why she wants to be near you, why she feels like she can finally take a breath after holding it for years. But her body knows. Her heart knows. And you know, because you've walked through the fire. You've met your own shadows and didn't run. You've learned how to sit with discomfort without needing to fix it. You've stopped needing women to respond a certain way in order to feel powerful. You've stopped using their softness to define your strength. You've stopped waiting for them to complete you. You've already completed yourself. And because of that, you've become the space where the feminine doesn't just feel wanted, she feels safe. You've become the kind of man who doesn't need her to react, or open up, or play a part. You've become the kind of man whose energy says, you can be exactly who you are. You don't have to change a thing. And that kind of space is something she may not have known she was looking for. But once she feels it, she remembers it like something sacred she thought she'd lost. Her nervous system relaxes. Her instincts stop preparing for danger. Her whole being starts to exhale. Because she knows, even if she can't explain how, that your energy isn't hungry anymore. It's full. And fullness feels safe. It feels trustworthy. It feels real. She's been watched before. She's been desired. She's been pursued. But rarely has she been seen. Truly seen. And even more rarely has she been allowed to simply exist in her full feminine power, without being judged, without being rushed, without being controlled. Around you, she doesn't have to earn your attention. She doesn't have to put on a show. She doesn't have to protect herself from being misunderstood. She doesn't have to defend her feelings. She doesn't have to shrink or twist herself into something she's not. Because nothing in your energy is trying to take from her. You're not looking for an outcome. You're not looking for control. You're just present. Fully, deeply, steadily present. That presence is a rare kind of peace. A peace that isn't quiet because it's empty, but quiet because it's full. Because it's complete. And when you bring that energy into a room, you don't disturb the space. You shift it. You don't demand attention. You draw it. You don't announce your power. You embody it. And the feminine responds to that more than anything. Not with her thoughts. Not even with her feelings. But with something deeper. Her instincts. Her intuition. Her breath. Her body. You're not reaching for her anymore. You're not leaning into her hoping she'll give you something. You're not pressing into her hoping to be filled. You're standing still, grounded, full, and that changes the dynamic completely. Because for the first time in a long time, she doesn't feel like she's being pursued. She feels like she's being welcomed. She feels like she's being received, not consumed. Not controlled, just accepted. Your energy no longer tries to force anything. It doesn't rush. It doesn't chase. It doesn't perform. It just is. And in that calm, in that stillness, in that quiet fullness, she finds something she's rarely been given, a chance to just be herself. No pretending. No protecting. No calculating, no performing, just being. She feels her walls falling, not because you asked her to drop them, but because your energy never made them feel necessary in the first place. She speaks without second guessing. She laughs without trying to sound charming. She shares her truth without apologizing for it. She opens up without worrying that it will be used against her, because nothing in your presence is trying to use her. Nothing in your eyes is trying to take. Everything in you is simply allowing, witnessing, holding. And that is why she responds to you in ways even she doesn't fully understand. That's why she tells you things she's never told anyone. Why she lets her voice tremble without retreating. Why she lets her tears fall without apologizing. Why she doesn't flinch when you get close. Because you don't shrink away when she's intense. You don't collapse when she's soft. You don't disappear when she's emotional. You stay. You breathe. You witness. And that makes you different. That makes you rare. That makes you unforgettable. You don't need her to be manageable. You don't need her to be small. You simply allow her to be what she is, however she is, in any given moment. And that permission, silent, powerful, gentle, is something she doesn't receive often. It's something she didn't even know she needed until you gave it to her. Just by being who you are, your sexual energy no longer screams. It no longer reaches out in hunger. It hums beneath the surface. It radiates inward. It's calm. It's steady. It's deeply present. And she feels it. Not like a spotlight that makes her freeze, but like a warmth that makes her melt. It doesn't invade. It doesn't pressure. It invites. It holds. She doesn't feel like prey around you. She feels like a queen. Not a fantasy version created by flattery and seduction, but a real queen, honored, respected, seen. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, completely. Because you don't try to rise by pushing her down. You don't try to lead by making her follow. You don't try to impress by outshining her. You simply remain rooted in your own presence. And that is what makes you powerful. Not your ability to take, but your ability to stay. Your ability to hold. Your ability to breathe through anything she brings. You're not performing the masculine anymore. You are the masculine. Not in a loud, overbearing way. Not in a rehearsed, shallow way. In a quiet, real, grounded way. And that is what makes her body respond with peace, not just attraction. That's what makes her energy soften, her voice slow, her breath deepen. Because she's no longer preparing for disappointment. She's no longer holding her breath for the fall. She's simply being, because you are. You don't flinch when she opens. You don't shrink when she rises. You don't collapse when she brings intensity. You hold it. You stay present. You breathe. And that is what separates you from the rest. You are not the man who needs her energy to feel masculine. You are the man who is already full, already enough, already grounded. And in that fullness, she can finally empty out. She can pour out her truth, her feelings, her softness, her silence, without fear that it will be too much. And when a woman finds a man like that, she remembers it forever.
Have you ever wondered what might happen if you stopped giving your energy to things that leave you feeling empty and started keeping that energy inside, letting it grow, letting it transform you from the inside out? What if the real reason you felt different your whole life, the reason relationships felt draining, the reason you couldn't follow the crowd, the reason you often preferred silence over noise, was because you were never meant to live like everyone else? What if you've always been a chosen one and your soul has simply been waiting for the right moment to wake up? That moment comes quietly, not with fireworks, but with a deep inner knowing, a sense that it's time to change, time to stop chasing, time to stop giving your sacred energy away to people, habits, or feelings that don't honor your truth. Something in you starts whispering. Maybe it's time to turn inward. Maybe it's time to reclaim your power. And that whisper becomes a flame, a fire that slowly rises inside you the moment you choose the path most won't take, the path of celibacy, of sacred discipline, of holding your energy instead of losing it. The path of walking away from what feels good temporarily and walking toward what will elevate your soul forever. This choice changes everything. When a chosen one decides to stop giving away their sexual energy and begins to hold it with intention, the change is not just physical. It's spiritual. It's emotional. It's mental. It's energetic. Something ancient begins to awaken. Something powerful, raw, and deeply sacred. And that awakening isn't random. It's part of who you are. It's the remembrance of the truth your soul has always carried. This path has nothing to do with shame or repression. It's not about pretending that sexuality is wrong. It's about realizing that your sexual energy is your life force. It's the same energy that creates worlds, breathes passion into ideas, and connects you to the divine. And when that energy is held, respected, and redirected upward instead of spilled outward, it becomes fuel for your spiritual evolution. It becomes the very thing that unlocks your gifts. You begin to feel different. You start noticing things you didn't before. Your body feels calmer. Your mind becomes quieter. Your soul starts to speak louder. You feel more connected to the divine. You sense energy. You start hearing your inner voice again. Not the voice of fear or desire, but the voice of truth. And you're not alone in this. Throughout history, prophets, monks, mystics, saints, and warriors all practiced some form of celibacy, not because they feared pleasure, but because they understood the true power of sexual energy. They knew that it could either be wasted on quick satisfaction or refined into something that could heal, awaken, and move the entire soul forward. You're tapping into that same truth now. And whether this is your first time hearing it, or it's a truth you've always carried, something in you knows it's time. Time to live differently. Time to hold your energy. Time to protect what's sacred. Time to stop giving your soul to what drains you and start building something that lifts you. At first, it may feel hard. The old desires will rise. The world will tempt you to go back. Your body may scream for old comforts. But with every moment you say no to the temporary, you say yes to your transformation. With every time you choose discipline over impulse, you become stronger, more clear, more powerful, and slowly, without even trying, your energy begins to change. Your eyes deepen. Your voice carries calm. Your presence grows quiet but magnetic. People start noticing you without knowing why. You no longer need to speak loudly. You no longer need attention. You become the energy, and people feel it the moment you walk into a room. Your aura starts to stretch. Your silence begins to speak. You no longer have to force your worth. You embody it. And then comes the clarity. Your mind clears in ways you never imagined. You begin to see through distractions. You realize how much of the world runs on confusion, how entertainment, lust, and endless noise are all used to keep people disconnected from themselves. But you're not confused anymore. You're clear. You think deeply. You feel with intention. You create space in your mind for truth to rise. You begin to lead your thoughts instead of being led by them. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop chasing. You start aligning. And in that space, you become incredibly focused. You begin to protect your time, your energy, your peace. You don't just exist, you begin to live on purpose. You're no longer easily influenced. You're no longer controlled by what used to control you. You begin to walk in full awareness, in full presence, and your life starts to follow that energy. You begin waking up earlier, moving with intention, eating better, breathing deeper, meditating longer. You start to protect your mind like a sacred temple, and people notice, not because you post about it, but because you're glowing differently. Your body starts to shift. Your health improves. Your heart feels lighter. Your inner world becomes more peaceful. The more you hold your energy, the more alive you feel. You're no longer giving your soul to what breaks it. You're building something steady, pure, real, and in a world addicted to quick pleasure, someone like you becomes rare. You become a silent warrior, a lighthouse in the dark, a mirror that shows people their own truth just by being in your presence. You no longer try to fit in. You no longer water yourself down to be liked. You know who you are now. You felt your own power. The most incredible thing is, as you stay on this path, you start attracting everything that is meant for you. The noise begins to fade. The wrong people leave. The draining relationships fall apart without effort, because your vibration no longer matches theirs. You stop begging for love. You stop searching for validation. You stop needing to chase. And instead, love finds you. Purpose finds you. Peace finds you. Alignment finds you. And when it finds you, it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels calm, clear, real. You begin to meet people who are on your frequency. You find mentors, soul tribe, divine connections. Your life begins to open up in ways that feel guided. Everything starts flowing. Conversations, opportunities, healing. It's like the universe has been waiting for you to step into your real energy. And now that you have, it starts responding. Doors open. Signs appear. Synchronicities become normal. You say something, and it happens. You think of someone, and they show up. You feel a pull, and the answer comes. This is not magic. This is what happens when you stop leaking your energy and start owning it. And in this state, you become untouchable. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer fear being alone. You're grounded, rooted, clear. Your strength is quiet, but it shakes the ground. Your presence is soft, but it breaks illusions. You become a mirror of truth, a vessel of light, a living reminder of what real power looks like. And this world doesn't know what to do with people like you, because you can't be bought. You can't be distracted. You can't be manipulated. You are walking with your Creator now. You are guided by your own soul. You are aligned with something that cannot be touched by fear or noise or temptation. You are a chosen one, not because you're better than others, but because you chose the higher road. You chose healing over comfort, truth over pleasure, purpose over ego. You chose to remember who you really are, and that makes you sacred. So if you feel this message in your bones, if your soul has been crying out for something deeper, if you've been walking through the darkness wondering why you feel so different, this is why. You are being prepared. You are being purifying. You are being positioned for something greater than you've ever imagined. Stay on the path. It won't be easy. You'll face temptation. You'll face loneliness. You'll face moments when it would be easier to go back. But don't. Keep going. Keep rising. Because what's waiting for you on the other side of this journey is not just peace or power or clarity. It's you, the real you, the highest version of who you've always been meant to be. And that version of you is unstoppable. Type 111 if you feel this. Not for me, not for anyone watching, but for yourself. To mark the moment your spirit said yes, to declare that you are ready, that you are walking forward now, that you are done leaking your power and are ready to live in it fully, because your time has come. You are chosen, and you are awakening. Have you ever felt like your soul was trying to tell you something? Like something deep inside you was waking up? That quiet feeling is not your imagination. It's your spirit remembering who you really are. And for many chosen ones, that awakening begins with one decision: stepping away from lust, from meaningless physical connections, and choosing celibacy, not because they are ashamed of desire, but because they realize how sacred their energy is. They start to feel that not everyone deserves access to their body, their heart, or their spirit. Sexual energy is more than physical. It's deeply spiritual. When it's given carelessly, it opens doors that can't always be seen, doors that allow in confusion, heaviness, sadness, or even spiritual interference. Many people don't realize that every physical bond leaves a spiritual imprint. Even if it was just a moment, that energy lingers. That memory stays. And over time, if those connections are never healed, they begin to weigh us down. The chosen ones start to feel it. They may not always have the words for it, but they sense it. Something isn't right. Something feels heavy, and so they begin to pull back. They begin to protect their energy. They choose celibacy not out of fear, but out of deep inner wisdom. They want their soul back. Their mind becomes clearer. Their emotions become calmer. Their aura starts to heal. They stop leaking energy. They stop letting people drain their spirit. And when that happens, the spiritual world reacts. The forces that used to feed on their confusion, addiction, and lust begin to lose control. The darkness, the low energies, the manipulative spirits, they notice. And that's when the attacks often increase. Not because the chosen one is falling, but because they are rising. Their light is getting stronger. Their presence is becoming too powerful to ignore. They're no longer easy to influence. Their silence becomes a wall. Their discipline becomes a shield. They don't need to explain themselves. Their energy speaks for them. And now, the enemy can no longer enter, because the chosen one is not just avoiding darkness. They are shining so brightly that darkness can't survive in their space. This decision also unlocks another gift, their creativity, because the same energy that fuels desire also fuels inspiration. When that energy is held, when it's no longer wasted on casual encounters or emotional drama, it starts to rise. It becomes vision. It becomes fire. It becomes purpose. That's why so many mystics, prophets, and artists practiced celibacy, not because they were afraid of sex, but because they had learned how to transform that energy into creation. The chosen one starts to feel a pull to express what's inside them. Through art, through writing, through music, through ideas. Through leadership, their spirit begins to flow. Their work becomes powerful. Their words begin to heal. And the world starts to notice, not because they are loud, but because their energy is real. Their creativity doesn't come from ego. It comes from something higher. And that energy, that truth, is rare in today's world. They are no longer seeking validation. They aren't looking for approval or attention. They are building something greater, something eternal. They begin to walk in alignment with divine timing. They move when they're guided. They speak when their soul speaks. They stop wasting time chasing people. They start chasing purpose. And when that happens, their life begins to transform. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned. Their path becomes clear. They don't need to force anything anymore. Everything starts to flow. And this freedom makes them dangerous to the world's systems. Because most of what we see around us, media, advertising, entertainment, is built on lust and distraction. It keeps people confused. It keeps them chasing shallow pleasure, so they never discover their deeper truth. But when the chosen one becomes celibate, they break out of that system. They unplug from the trap. They no longer believe every lie. They are no longer easy to manipulate. A person who doesn't crave attention can't be controlled. A soul that's no longer addicted can't be owned. And that's why the celibate chosen one becomes a real threat. Not to people, but to systems built on fear, control, and spiritual blindness. Now their energy is focused. Their power is centered. Their purpose becomes unstoppable. Because purpose requires clarity. And clarity comes when distractions are removed. That's what celibacy gives them. Space to breathe. Strength to choose differently. Fire to follow through. They are no longer just existing. They are living with direction. They're not perfect, but they're present. They are connected to something sacred. Their soul begins to lead. Their actions carry weight, and the world feels their shift. They don't scream. They don't beg. They simply walk, and the earth responds. This is why chosen ones become so powerful when they abstain. It's not about suppressing their nature. It's about rising into a higher one. They stop letting the world define them, and they let their spirit shape them. It's not about fear. It's about remembering. Remembering that they were never meant to be ordinary. They were never meant to give themselves away to those who can't honor them. They were meant to shine. They were meant to create. They were meant to lead. And they were meant to protect their sacred fire. This path is not for everyone. It is not easy. But if something in your heart is stirring while hearing this, it means the message is for you. You're being called back to yourself, to your power, to your purpose. Protect your energy. Honor your body. Stop giving your spirit to people who don't see your worth. You are not meant to be drained. You are meant to overflow. This journey will require strength, but the strength is already in you. It's been waiting for this moment.
Have you ever met someone who didn't say much, but the moment they entered the room, everything felt different? Not because of how they looked, not because of what they said, but because of the quiet power they carried. What if I told you that person is you, chosen one? There was a time when you moved through the world almost invisibly. You weren't loud. You weren't trying to stand out. But deep inside, you longed for someone, anyone, to truly see you. Not for how you looked, not for how you played a role, but for who you were becoming. You didn't need applause. You weren't asking for praise. You just wanted to be understood. You wanted someone to look past your silence and into the depth of your soul. But the world doesn't slow down for souls that are still blooming. It celebrates what is finished, what is polished, what fits neatly into a box. You were never meant to fit in that box. And because of that, for a long time, your truth went unnoticed. You walked alone, misunderstood, misread. You had a pure heart, but it was doubted. You had strong intentions, but they were questioned. Still, you stayed steady, even when no one believed in you, even when no one clapped. Something inside you said, "Keep going." You didn't choose kindness because it was easy. You chose it because it was right. You didn't hold on to integrity because it made you popular. You held on because it was who you are. And now, after all the silence, all the rejection, all the hidden growth, you are becoming someone the world cannot ignore. You no longer chase attention. You carry presence. You no longer beg to be seen. You are felt before you're noticed. The shift in you didn't come from the outside. It happened deep within. It was born in the nights you cried quietly. In the mornings you got up even when your heart was heavy. It happened every time you chose truth over approval, peace over chaos, depth over distraction. And now, you radiate something rare, something real, something people lean into without even knowing why. There's something in the way you walk now. You don't rush. You move with rhythm, with purpose, with peace. You don't speak to impress. You speak with intention. You don't enter rooms to take up space. You bring calm to them. You don't look for validation. You are the validation. You've become the kind of man who no longer needs the spotlight, because the light is already within you, and the feminine notices. Not in a shallow way, not in a way that's about charm or words. She feels it in her bones, in her breath. She softens around you, not because you demand it, but because your presence makes her feel safe. She remembers something ancient when she's near you. She may not be able to say it out loud, but her soul recognizes the kind of man her grandmothers once prayed still existed. And she realizes he does. You are not a fantasy. You are the answer to that quiet longing. You didn't get here by trying to impress anyone. You got here by staying true when no one was watching, by walking with honesty when it cost you comfort, by holding your own hand when no one else offered theirs. That truth didn't just live in you. It took root. It grew. And now it speaks through everything you do. Your silence has weight. Your calm has depth. You don't walk around asking to be trusted. You simply live in a way that makes people feel they can rest in your presence. You've become a foundation in a world that constantly shakes. And because of that, people are drawn to you, not for what they can get, but for what they feel. They don't follow you because of charisma. They follow because you remind them of what's real. You no longer need to explain yourself. Your energy does it for you. You speak without speaking. You anchor without holding. You protect without controlling. And women feel this first, not because you chase them, but because you don't. You respect the feminine, not because you need her to complete you, but because you recognize the divine in her. Your strength isn't loud. It's sacred. It's steady. It's built from nights of fighting battles no one knew about, from mornings of getting up with no reward, from moments of choosing to grow instead of giving up. And now, that growth shows. You've stopped bending yourself to fit in. You've stopped shrinking your light to make others comfortable. You've stopped offering watered-down versions of your truth just to avoid being too much. Now you walk in full light, and the world is adjusting to your frequency. You are not just respected, you are recognized. And that kind of recognition doesn't come from the eyes, it comes from the soul. People sense you before they understand you. They feel drawn in, not because of your voice, but because of your stillness. Not because of your strength, but because of the safety you carry in it. You don't try to dominate. You don't try to perform. You simply are. And that being is what makes your presence unforgettable. You've become the kind of man who doesn't just walk into a room, you change its atmosphere. You calm storms that haven't even begun. You make anxious hearts breathe easier. Not because you try, but because your spirit is grounded. And in this world, groundedness is rare. Groundedness is magnetic. Groundedness is what people crave, but don't know how to name. That's what you've become. You are not led by ego anymore. You are moved by purpose. And that purpose shows up in how you walk, how you speak, how you listen, how you hold space for others. You are not interested in chasing noise. You are drawn to stillness. You are not pulled by attention. You are anchored by intention. Now, women come close not because you dazzle them, but because you remind them of what it feels like to feel safe in their own softness. You don't try to seduce. You create space for them to breathe, and that space is sacred. That space is healing. That space is rare. You've become a mirror, not one that reflects what people want to see, but one that shows them who they truly are. And in your reflection, they remember their truth. You don't need to fix anyone. You just show them what's possible when a man walks in alignment with his soul. You've become the proof that power doesn't have to be loud, that confidence doesn't have to be arrogant, that leadership doesn't have to be forceful. You've become the man who leads not with words, but with presence. And your presence speaks the loudest when you're quiet. It says, I know who I am. I've earned this peace. I've walked through the fire. I've learned how to stand without needing to be lifted. I don't need to be chosen to know I belong. I don't need applause to know I've made it. I've become whole, and in that wholeness, I've found something that no title, no spotlight, no validation could ever give me. You're not here to impress. You're here to anchor. You're not here to win people over. You're here to remind them of what love, truth, and strength actually feel like. You're no longer seeking to be celebrated. You're simply living a life that honors what's sacred. And that sacred energy, quiet, grounded, steady, is what makes you unforgettable. Not because of how many people know your name, but because of how many hearts feel safe in your presence. That is your legacy now. That is your power. That is your truth. You've reached a place few ever do. You're no longer chasing attention, approval, or recognition. You've let go of needing to be seen and started living in a way that can't help but be felt. You've stopped trying to be impressive and started becoming deeply present. You don't need anyone to validate you because you've already validated yourself. And that shift, quiet, powerful, sacred, is what everyone around you feels, even if they don't know how to describe it. Especially women. They don't just notice you anymore. They remember how they felt in your presence. Calm, grounded, safe. You've become the kind of man who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard, doesn't need to demand respect to be honored, doesn't need to play games to be wanted. You've become the kind of man who simply is, and that alone changes everything. Women don't feel the need to chase your attention. They don't feel pressure to perform around you. Something about you tells them they don't need to try so hard anymore. They feel free to just be themselves. They feel respected. They feel held. You don't play with their emotions. You don't take from them. You offer them space. Space to breathe. Space to soften. Space to come back to themselves. You're not someone who tries to dominate or control. You're someone who stands still and invites peace. And that stillness, that calm in your energy, reaches them in ways that words can't. You didn't become this man by accident. You didn't read a few books or follow a trend. You became this man by losing parts of yourself you thought you needed. You became this man by feeling pain that made you question everything. You learned to sit with your emotions without letting them control you. You learned how to stay quiet when your ego wanted to scream. You learned to choose peace over power, softness over pride, depth over noise. And in that process, you started to change. You stopped reacting and started responding. You stopped chasing things outside of you and started building something sacred within. That sacred space inside you has become something rare, something real, something women feel without needing an explanation. You're not perfect. You've made mistakes. You've failed. You've doubted yourself. But you didn't stay there. You didn't let those moments define you. You let them refine you. You learned from them. You listened. You healed. And now, when you speak, people lean in. Not because your voice is loud, but because your words are rooted in truth. You don't talk just to talk. You speak when it matters. You speak with intention. Your words have meaning. They carry weight. They're not meant to impress. They're meant to plant something deep in the heart of whoever is listening. You're no longer interested in proving you're right. You've stopped caring about winning arguments or being the smartest in the room. That need fell away quietly, not because you gave up, but because you outgrew it. You realize that truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to fight. It just stands, firm, unshaken. And those who are ready for it come closer, not because you force them to, but because they feel drawn to something honest, something rare, something real. You've stopped throwing your truth at people like a weapon. You've started offering it like a gift, softly, steadily, without demand, without ego, just as it is. Your silence speaks now. It says more than many men's loudest declarations. But your silence isn't empty. It's full. It's listening. It's observing. It's honoring the moment. You don't rush to fill space with noise. You know the power of being still, of letting things unfold. You've learned how to sit with someone without trying to fix them, how to hear their pain without making it about you, how to be fully present without needing to be in control. And that kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence is healing. It's what women have been longing for. It's what most people didn't even know they needed until they felt it. You don't chase admiration. You don't seek approval. You don't need to be the center of attention. But your energy draws people in, not because it's loud, but because it's real. It's rooted. It's safe. You walk with a rhythm now that can't be taught. It can only be earned. It's not a performance. It's not a brand. It's not an act. It's the result of everything you've been through, every decision you made to grow instead of hide, to face instead of run, to stay true to yourself when it would have been easier to fold. People feel this rhythm before they even speak to you. It shifts conversations. It softens the air. It makes people want to slow down. Because you've slowed down, you no longer race against time. You no longer panic when things don't happen quickly. You move at the pace of truth, the pace of presence, the pace of purpose. And that kind of movement is powerful, not because it demands anything, but because it invites everything real to meet it. And the people who aren't ready for that rhythm, they fall away, not because you push them out, but because your energy no longer entertains anything that doesn't match it. Women feel this the most, not just because you're attractive, but because you're safe. Not safe in the surface level way that means you're nice, but safe in the deepest way, the way that tells their nervous system they can let go, they can exhale, they can stop fighting to be seen. Around you, they remember themselves. Around you, they stop shrinking. They stop performing. They reconnect with who they are. Because you don't need them to be anything but real. You don't compete with their energy. You complement it. You honor it. You invite it to rise with yours, not beneath you, not behind you, but beside you. This didn't come easily. You had to lose a lot. You had to let go of comfort. You had to walk away from shallow paths and cheap validation. You had to choose integrity over attention. You had to say no to shortcuts. You had to disappoint people who wanted you to stay small. And that cost you something. But what you gained in return is priceless. You've become sovereign. You've become grounded. You've become a man who doesn't need the world to bow to him because he already knows who he is. And that knowing radiates from you. It speaks louder than any title, louder than any speech, louder than any performance. Now you lead without trying. You guide without preaching. You protect without possessing. You listen without interrupting. You stand without shaking. You've become the kind of man who doesn't draw people in through force, but through presence. Your life is no longer a chase. It's a beacon. Those who feel it come closer. Those who don't fall away. And that's not cold. That's clarity. That's alignment. That's truth. You don't need everyone to understand you. You only need to stay aligned with what's real. Your presence has become a kind of medicine. A quiet reminder of what it feels like to be whole. And that reminder lingers long after you've left. You don't need to be remembered for your words or your looks. You're remembered for how you made others feel. Not manipulated, not impressed, not overwhelmed, but understood. safe, seen. And that kind of impact is eternal. You're no longer at war with yourself. That peace inside you reaches everyone around you. It calms chaos. It softens tension. It brings clarity. You've become the kind of man people look to when everything around them falls apart. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've built a sanctuary inside yourself. And being near you reminds them they can do the same. You've become the kind of man who doesn't just walk through life. He leaves something sacred behind. You leave an imprint on the soul, the kind that makes people stop and wonder what it was about you, why their breath slowed, why their heart opened, why their guard dropped, why they felt safe. It wasn't what you said. It wasn't what you wore. It wasn't what you achieved. It was what you carried. And what you carried was peace, stillness, presence, truth. You're not looking for applause. You're not looking to be worshipped. You're not looking to be needed. You're here to walk in alignment, to offer something real, to live from your soul. And in doing so, you've become unforgettable, not because of your noise, but because of your quiet power, because of your unshakable presence, because of the peace you offer simply by being yourself.